So it's finally time to produce that song you've been thinking about for weeks. But where do I start? What if the song flops? It probably sounded better in my head anyways. I'll just wait for the better time to produce this idea. But there it is again. Overthinking. Everyone when starting out music production wants to strive to be able to just come up with ideas magically and always have this inspiration and motivation to just produce songs on a whim, anytime, any day. But unfortunately, you'll probably very soon find out that that's just not the reality. We want to be able to just produce whenever we have this motivation and inspiration, but that comes and goes like the wind. There's no guarantee you're going to be inspired and motivated one day to create music. Sometimes it'll come, and great, take advantage of that, but we can't rely on them. We can't just wait for it, because you'll soon find out that if you only produce when inspired and motivated, you're really not going to produce much. You're going to have very slim amount of ideas, and especially from the early stage, you're going to realize that even then, your ideas probably aren't that good anyways. So by doing this, you're really limiting yourself to the amount of growth you could have by just constantly producing more, even when you don't have that inspiration, even when you're creating absolutely awful ideas. Now, what can we do about this? What can we do about the fact that we can't always rely on this inspiration to come up with ideas? Well, I believe the best way to come up with ideas is with consistency. Let me explain. I think there's 3 different ways you can be consistent in making music that'll make you spark ideas without relying on that motivation or inspiration to pop up magically out of nowhere. So I'm going to categorize in 3 different ways that you might have not heard it before. So firstly, you need to be consistent in curiosity. So consistently learning, consistently doing new things, experimenting with things you've probably never tried before. You can learn from all the best tips and trick videos out there to get all that information, but the best way to actually improve from that is by actually applying it and doing your own spin on things. Experimenting with stuff that maybe you've never tried before, pressing knobs that you might have never thought were useful, doing things against the books, maybe even breaking some rules, and seeing how it sounds, trying to find what works and what doesn't, and consistently doing so. With every song, not being afraid to be different and do something completely wild. Secondly, and this one's pretty obvious, but consistently producing. Of course, you're not going to get good at any skill if you're not consistently sharpening your skills there and putting the effort and the work and actually doing that thing, even when you don't really feel like doing it. Because let's be real, we don't really always want to produce. We want to produce when we have that flash of inspiration, the ideas there, or sometimes we'll sit down and produce and we won't make anything for a while and then we'll give up. But it's important to get your mind trained for the habit of sitting at your desk consistently, maybe around the same time, with the intention to produce something. Whenever I do a consistent, let's say 7-day challenge video on producing a song every day, I have that intention. Okay, today I'm going to make a song for this video, whether it's a perfect idea or not. I just have the intention and okay, I'm gonna go do it. It's changing the mindset from, okay, let's see if I come up with something, and if I don't, boo-hoo, to, okay, I'm gonna make something today, let's see what I create. So we're detaching from the end result. We're detaching from trying to have this perfectionist mindset, and we're moving to just sitting down and get something done and finishing whatever we have, making a full idea out of whatever we first get. Thirdly, and probably most importantly, perseverance. Now, it sounds a little maybe cheesy or corny right now, but let me explain. Because when you sit down and produce consistently, like I said, you're gonna reach the points where you can't come up with any ideas, where nothing seems to fit, where everything sounds horrible, where you kind of get that brain fog and you just really don't want to produce right now. And sometimes our first response is, all right, let me go on YouTube, let me scroll on my phone, let me watch something maybe stimulating, something to kind of distract me from that. But what you want to do is go through that, work during this time of brain fog, of possibly like literal pain, like where it actually sucks to be sitting here and producing. You feel like you can't even like listen to what you're making properly, but keep going, doing random things until you do eventually try to make something out of whatever you can come up with. Because you have to realize that the goal isn't to just make your best song ever. Your goal is just to make something. We're in the beginning stages of producing. We're not gonna make our best song now, and I really hope you don't. If, like, let's say you've been producing for a couple years only, you're gonna have better ideas. You're gonna make a better song than you just did. Even if you think maybe you peaked back then, you had better ideas back then, maybe look at the other aspects of your life. Where are you lacking in everything else? Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So let's say if I'm not doing well in production, instead of thinking I used to be better back then, I'm just worse now, that sucks. Think more, where am I lacking in life? Maybe there's somewhere that's seeping into music production as a habit, as a discipline of something to do. Maybe that sounds a bit far-fetched, but trust me, if you apply this and you realize this truth, I think it can really skyrocket your creativity in music, and to be honest, any part of your life. Now, I'm not just saying this. I had this experience many times already. I'm not the most experienced producer, I'll put that up front. But I had this song here. I had this idea in my head that I've kind of been going around for a while now. It's a really simple idea, just about 3 notes, and I got it after listening to one of Skrillex's song. I forgot what it's called. In the buildup of this song, for some reason in my head, I heard a different melody, and I thought that would have been hype, and I just had that idea in my head, but I never implemented on it. I kept overthinking. I kept saying, I'm gonna put it off until I get that feeling, that inspiration. Until one day, I was like sitting at my DAW, FL Studio, and I just wanted to make something. And I thought of that in my head. I was like, what if I just try to put this down? And a couple hours later, I came up with nothing. Yeah, it's still not easy, but that's not a problem, because what happened later was I had this project with very rough ideas, nothing that I thought I can really work off of. I thought the idea maybe sounded better in my head than it really would, but then I came back to it a couple days later, and that's when the idea started to flow, because I stayed persistent and I stayed consistent doing it even though I thought there was no ideas there. All right, so here's the project, and it's quite the big project here. I'm just gonna go step by step, looking through each of the little parts, not get into too much detail. I just wanna go over the main things that I think you can learn from, right? So here's a quick playthrough before we get into that. Okay, let's start with the main idea, where it came from. And man, let me tell you, when it sounds stupid that this was my main idea that was in my head for like weeks, yeah, it's crazy. But essentially, it was just these 3 notes here. Just kind of the rising tension of that. I didn't even initially have the idea of having it more rhythmic with hitting every beat, but it changes a little bit over time. That was the simple idea, and it went where it went, let me tell you that. But basically, the mindset here is just adding more energy, right? This is supposed to be a very high energy song, building tension. So you want a lot of these like high frequencies, things rising in tension, right? So that's kind of the whole thing here, right? I'm adding more sounds like this patch. Very simple, but it rise. That's kind of like the mindset there, right? That's the main thing. This is more to add space, add some cool tones in the background. But here's where the idea started to evolve. Now I have this very interesting sound I made here. It sounds rough on its own. It sounds decent in the mix. And, you know, I'm going to still tweak it, trying to make it sound a little cleaner. But essentially where I came up with this, how I got this came from this. How I did that, completely free plugins, is I used the free plugin delay. I'll try to have it linked in the description. If I don't, then you can yell at me in the comments. This is a really good delay plugin, and it has this mode, chaos mode, and reverse cast mode. So these are just, they kind of play with, you know, octaves, reversing, and it just sounds really chaotic. Again, this is not gonna be the exact same settings. I don't remember the exact settings I had, but let's just put maybe 8th note, normal. And then take out the dry. You can already hear it. But you hear that little sound there? Almost, I mean, you can hear it, the similar, like, it turned into like almost this weird, very different sounding sound. I don't know why it did that, but it did. And I took it and I started chopping it up and I turned it into this melody here. Almost like a very distorted electric guitar or something, but it's super interesting how that came out. And this became the driving force for the song. So this is still here, right? This main idea. But then that took it to the next level, in my opinion. That's what brought it to life, gave the song a different identity, so it's not as basic, right? And it's important to have some sort of identity in your song, something that makes it stand out in a way. This does that the most for this song. Even though it's not the craziest idea, that's what does it for the most part. This section, you know, it just changes to just 4 on the floor kicks. One last thing. Here's a trick to be different. Just take the reasoning behind this. You don't need to do this trick all the time, but here's the build up. Tell me you've heard a fake out like that. Okay, it's kind of like the reverse of what a normal build up slash fake out is. Normally when you make a build up or fake out, you take out something so that when the drop hits, it has bigger impact. And we do that here in a bit, but normally we take out the lows. We want the sub to come and hit hard. What I did here instead was made the sub actually distort the entire track. I brought the stereo width to the center. I lowered the master volume as well during this build up here. So it gets quieter, sub bass gets distorted, so it's like it's so much tension build up, and the stereo width is getting small here. My hand moves are going crazy right now. So even though we're at like more frequencies technically are being there, the drop still has impact because it comes in stereo width, it's louder, and it's just clean, I guess, right? And you know, you can think it sounds trash, but just the idea of doing something kind of against the books, breaking the rules a little bit, you know, doing something different, it's just fun to do that. I can go into more details like my mindset and things doing that, but that's going to be the end of it here. I hope I inspired you. Hope I got you to stop overthinking, to just start making something, because maybe you'll make something cooler than you expected, or different, or flop, but it's all part of the process. I'll see ya.